Now let's talk about the objects which we are returning in our reducer, in our Redux reducer. I mentioned in the last lecture that we always return a brand new snapshot, a brand new state object, which Redux will use to replace its existing state with. So the objects which we return in the reducer will not, and that's super important, will not be merged with the existing state. They will overwrite the existing state. So if we, for example, don't set show counter here when we increment it, because we forgot to add it here, if we do this, if I click increment, you see I close my counter. I close my counter when I click increment, even though I shouldn't, because I don't set show counter here. Hence, it's basically removed from the object, and it has a value of undefined, therefore, and undefined is treated as falsy, so we don't render the counter then. And that's, of course, a side effect which we don't want. That's an error. So we must always set all the other states when we update a piece of state, because we overwrite the old state. Now that brings up one question. Why do we need to return a new piece of data here? Why can't we just use the state, which we're getting as an argument, access counter, and increment it like this, instead of returning? Or maybe we do it like this, and then we return state. And when we do that, we change state before we return it, and then we just return it again. Well, if we do that, and we reload, everything works. So it's not easy to see that this is wrong, but it is, even though it works. This is something you absolutely must not do when working with Redux. You should never, super important, never mutate the state, the existing state. You should never change the existing state. Instead, always override it by returning a brand new state object. And because objects and arrays are reference values in JavaScript, it's easy to accidentally override and change the existing state. You could, for example, think that you can do something like this, and then you return a new object where you then do set the counter to state.counter and show counter to state.showCounter. We can do this because we changed the counter here, and then we return a brand new object. Everything's good, right? Well, again, that will work. If I reload, it works, but it's still super bad because we still mutate the existing state, because objects and arrays are reference values in JavaScript. And in case it's not clear to you what I mean by that, attached you find a link which leads you to an article and a video where I explain this in depth. Now, when working with Redux and its state, you must never mutate state like this. Never change the original state which you're getting. This can lead to bugs, unpredictable behavior, and it can make debugging your application harder as well. So even though it doesn't lead to a bug here, it can have unwanted and unexpected side effects in bigger applications where your state gets out of sync and suddenly the UI is not reflecting your state correctly anymore. And hence the simple rule is never mutate your state like this. Always return a brand new object where you copy any nested objects or arrays, if you have any, and create brand new values, as we're doing it here. By updating our state like this, we create a brand new object where we don't change anything. And especially when you have a state with nested objects and arrays, it's easy to accidentally mutate your existing state, and therefore you should be super careful that you do this in an immutable way, that you never accidentally mutate your existing state, but you copy any objects which you added. So you always create a brand new object or array whenever you need to update data. You never just dive into an existing object and start manipulating its properties. Always copy and create new objects. Now at this point, it might look a little bit too early to emphasize it like this, because this is a fairly simple state here, but it is super important, easy to mess up, and something you should know right from the start, which is why I am emphasizing it here.